Hello, welcome to another edition of Devlin's Pirate Radio Show. That makes me your host, Devlin Bishop, and I'm here for another madcap episode. That's probably not how I describe this episode. I don't know. The word madcap pops in my head. Is that normal? Madcap. I'd like that. Yeah, I can't see myself doing madcap by myself. Maybe if I had a co-host that, did that, we get a little crazy and stuff like that. But anyhow, first word that popped in my head, but not the right one. I hope you're doing well today. It's been a great week for me, and I'm looking forward to talking to you guys and all. Hope you guys have kept well. Please let me know, send me an email. Let me know if we're friends, and if we're not friends, I love getting emails. Send me, a hello. I've listened to your podcast, I love when I hear people that I don't know listen to this. I'll take anyone, really, who listens to this. Anyone who's dedicated their time to me in one way or another. Today, I got a couple of great topics. I got some nostalgia, like not like Mondo nostalgia, as in I'm going to talk about some old memories that I have of my mother and her cooking and stuff. That's going to come up. And I'm also going to be taking a look at the movies that I saw in February 2017. I certainly made up for the January where I didn't go to movies. So, I got that coming up. But I thought I'm going to start things off with, now, don't fast forward, turn off. It's not a very pleasant way to start the thing, but it's something that's been on my mind. And as you people all know, if you're regular listeners, if it's on my mind, I'm going to talk about it. And it's basically Doomsday Clock, the Doomsday Clock. And not just that, but a little bit about Donald Trump and the way the world is right now. I told you, madcap was not the word I was looking for. Maddening, maybe, mad just as in crazy, wacko, whatever it is. But anyhow, I promised myself that I wasn't going to talk about Donald Trump. The reason why is because he's everywhere and he drives me crazy. Okay, I'm not a Trump supporter, but I'm also not a supporter of bashing Trump or going after him until, he's done a couple of things that are questionable. And I'm sure he's going to do a lot more things that are questionable. But every morning I go on my Facebook, and I like to start the day, maybe seeing some people's personal photos, maybe some spiritual, sayings, maybe even a couple of cat comedy or some funny memes or memes or whatever. And all I get is Donald Trump stuff, whether it's bashing him, jokes about him. And you have all the right in the world to post whatever you want on your Facebook. By all means, do so. But for me, it's not a great way to start. It just drives me crazy. People are obsessed with him, and it's just, to me, it's not news. I know some of you like to report the news. For me, I have my Mondo nostalgia, and I've added news to that where I put stories that are related to nostalgia. But I don't put hard-hitting news on mine. Because honestly, if you're coming to my Facebook for hard-hitting news, then you really need to, find a better outlet because, And if you're getting your news from anybody, even people posting it, always remember where they're posting it from, because sometimes people find an article about something Donald Trump's done, and then they post it, and the resources aren't really, right, but they just see, that puts down Donald Trump, I'm going to post it. So anyhow, I spend a lot of my Facebook mornings now just closing stuff, because I just see Donald Trump, and it's like, hide. If I want to see current news and stuff he's doing, then I will go to a news source and check it out. But this got me thinking about something. People are obsessing about Donald Trump. So I decided to investigate, why. And I finally figured it out. That is, people are literally scared. And I think that's when you post things that are humorous about Donald Trump, like little jokes, or even can you believe this idiot's doing this now? At first I just get crazy, but then what happened was I went out with some friends and had some dinner. And it didn't take long before people started talking about Donald Trump. And I just basically, my eyes probably rolled back into my head. I'm not a man who likes people who pull out their phones during dinner, or a person who likes people even talking about phones. Like, I got a new phone, and hey, I've got this phone, you got what phone? And I actually crave people talking about their phones because of that. I would have liked a nice sports talk, maybe. I would have taken anything, but nope, of course it's going to come around to Donald Trump. Now, Donald Trump's invaded my life, not only this way, and I'll get back to the dinner. I know I'm swerving, that's what I do. But what I'm talking about now is the fact that Donald Trump drives me crazy because people actually call me Donald Trump now. Now, for those of you who don't know, Devlin is my kind of stage persona name. It's to me, it is my name. I always feel weird having to defend it, but my birth name was Donald. And, you know, where I work and stuff, people know me as Donald. And some of the customers, hey, Donald Trump, Donald Trump. Now, before I used to get Donald Duck, Ronald McDonald, even growing up as a kid. Now I hate that I'm compared to Donald Trump. And I know they're not comparing me to Donald Trump, but just my name with him, because the name Trump just drives me crazy. But anyhow, we were at this dinner, and that it turned to Trump. So I just let it go. You know, I'm not going to contribute. I'm not going to thing. I just wanted to kind of say, can we just talk about something else, you know? And while I listened, I decided, okay, I'm going to really pay attention and see people's reactions on it. And I found that a lot of the comedy, or trying to put him down, was based on fear. The fear that he is going to bring the end of the world, the end of peace. And I'm really starting to feel that. I'm feeling that from friends who are out of nowhere will bring out, well, we're almost the end of the world anyhow, so might as well live a bit. Now, the reason I don't quench is, if you know me, I always talk about the world ending soon. I was brought up in the 80s, and I figure in the 50s and the 80s were the two times that we feared nuclear war more than anything. So I was born in a generation that I always think the world's going to end at the hands of nuclear war. And I don't think Donald Trump is the cause of it. I think it's been building for a lot longer than that. I think now we just have Donald Trump as big target, and he's an easy one, you know. Look what's going on in, you know, like Korea and stuff like that, North Korea, South Korea, and all that stuff. It's pretty scary stuff. In fact, if you really look at all the battles around the world, this stuff has been escalating for a while now. It's just Donald Trump has put a target on his back because he talks openly about it, and he's not afraid to. And in no way am I agreeing with Trump, but he's made some things, rules that have made him like not likable. And again, a reason why is because he's not going with the status quo, which is funny, though, because he did get elected. So you think there's got to be some kind of quo that followed him. But because he speaks against what the moral majority is, that's what puts a target on his back. And I tell you out there, people, it's not just him. You talk against the thing and you will be ostracized too. Luckily I had enough people that I can talk to that say the same thing. If you don't go along with what people think, you're looked at that. But target is a big, you know, Trump's a big mouth, so he gets the target on him. Now, I sympathize about people who are, you know, especially I know a lot of my friends, you know, they're going through life, you know, lots of good things happening to them now. And now they've got this fear that, you know, Trump could just push the missiles at any time or start a conflict. I always try to remind them that, you know, it's just not that simple. It takes, you know, multiple people to make a war, and he can't just make decisions like that right away. He still has to follow rules and stuff. And yeah, he could break those rules easily, but I honestly don't think Trump is going to do that. But it's interesting to now live in a world where people are fearing the end of the world again. Now, again, I used to watch, like, you all know, I'm a nostalgia freak, and it doesn't just go from music or TV or movies. I like watching short films of the past, and I remember watching the 1950s when they would be, teaching kids how to, stop, drop, and roll for nuclear invasion or go under your desk. Building bomb shelters, that became quite popular in the 50s because they believed, oh my God, they're going to drop the bomb at any moment. And then again in the 80s, where my teen years started off, Ronald Reagan took over, and Ronald Reagan was another one like Trump that because he didn't have a lot of well, he did. He did a lot of political stuff more than Trump did, but he was still considered like a trigger finger guy, like easy trigger finger, and he could hit the bomb. So back in the 80s, we got a lot of the, siren broadcasting on the TV, this is what you'll hear if there's and those used to drive me crazy. You'd just be sitting there watching TV, and then they'd come in at the commercial break, even cartoons, and it would be like, in case of emergency, woo, and they'd run that for a minute. That would drive me crazy because I'd be thinking, oh my God, they're testing this. There's got to be a reason they're testing it. So I became a kid always worried that the end of the world was near. So that's why I don't have these fears that some of these new people have. But I remember in the 80s was the time that I learned about the Doomsday Clock. And the Doomsday Clock freaked me out in a big way when I first heard about it. And I'm hearing about the Doomsday Clock again, and people are blatantly talking about it. And I even talked to a kid about it who did not know about the Doomsday Clock and instilled fear in him like a good adult should. Well, I'm not trying to make that lighthearted, but no, he didn't know about it, and I just kind of told him about it, and after he was kind of freaked out this thing existed. For those of you who don't know what the Doomsday Clock is I'm not even up on all my Doomsday Clock stuff, but basically it's a thing that is run by I'm looking it up right now because I don't want to look like I haven't done my homework. But honestly, I just read about the Doomsday Clock and I didn't actually find out if it's like a UN thing or if it's a thing. But the Doomsday Clock is something I learned about in the 80s where a group of people get together and decide how close to midnight the world is, and midnight is obviously destruction, end of the war, stuff like that. Okay, let me look up the official record so you don't think. The Doomsday Clock is a symbol which represents the likelihood of a global catastrophe, maintained since 1947 by the members of the Bulletin of the Atomic Scientists Science and Security Board. It hangs on a wall in the Bulletin's office in the University of Chicago. And they hold these press conferences, and due to things that happen in the world, they basically, they pull the clock back, the hands, to midnight or move it closer, depending on things. And after a couple things happened when Trump got into office, it was announced that the Doomsday Clock was going to move 30 seconds forward to put it at 2.5 minutes to midnight, which means that this is the closest it's ever been since the 1950s, okay? Because they all sit and decide, okay, it's time to move the clock. Now, the clock can move back again. So like if you see a lot of peace treaties or something signed or lots of good in the world, they'll move it back. But because when Trump came, a lot of people started, talking about Russia, Korea, North Korea, and all that. They decided to move it to 2.5 minutes. Now, it's funny because I talked to this kid about the Doomsday Clock because it freaked me out. I'm not a big fan of count. It's funny because I like some countdowns, but I used to hate the TV shows that had clocks in the corner. There's a MASH episode that they run down to try to get an organ to somebody, and it drives me crazy. I don't like that kind of stuff. Warnings where by the end of the clock. So the Doomsday Clock as a kid really freaked me out. And so I was talking to this kid at my work and said, "Oh, are you familiar with the Doomsday Clock? It moved 30 seconds. It's 2.5 minutes." And he didn't know what it was, and I told him, and I freaked him out a little bit. Like, I didn't mean to. I was just trying to educate him. And I think he looked it up, but he's a easygoing kid, so I don't think it like hurt him for life or anything like that. But it was weird to now the Doomsday Clock has come up in several conversations that I've talked about, and once again, I haven't thought about the Doomsday Clock probably since the 80s, when, as I said, I was obsessed with nuclear war because we were constantly being told that, oh, Reagan's going to start something or Reagan's going to cause something to be started, because Reagan was very much seen in a lot of ways like Donald Trump when he first got into office, that we could be in for something. So now we've got another 4 years to deal with this, and it's scary, and it's sort of refreshing in a way. It's always scary when you talk about the end of the world and annihilation and global catastrophe, but it's almost a little endearing to see people vulnerable again. Because I think we live in a world, well, in the world I live in, you see a lot of, first world problems and, people, talking about, oh my God, I lost all the numbers on my phone, or, something, minimal that even I catch myself doing it where I have problems. But now we're seeing people genuinely afraid again. And I'm not saying that's a good thing, that the world, but this is my world all the time. So to me, it's endearing to see people starting to care about things again. Maybe people are going to start caring about other people again. Maybe people are going to start getting more involved. You're starting to see not necessarily all good things. You're starting to see a lot of protests. That's a good thing. But you're also seeing like riots and stuff in places where it doesn't need to be. People are out there trying to be vocal, and the reason why is they're afraid. And maybe being a little bit afraid is a good thing. We try to take fear away. Like now, we raise kids to try to not have fear, but what we've put in them is a whole bunch of anxieties and stuff. And I know these anxieties because I got a lot of them from the 80s and the nuclear talk and the end of the world and this doomsday clock. Maybe it's a good thing to have a little bit of fear. I think, living like you have no fears in the world, it can be a good thing, but at the same time, the fear of losing stuff, losing everything you've worked for, kind of inspires you and it strengthens you. And you start realizing what's more important. That maybe the people in my life are more important than my phone, or more important than my computer or my car or my house. That the friends, my family, my loved ones, my kids, hug them closer. Maybe people will hug a little bit closer. Maybe people will go out to dinner and actually look into each other's eyes rather than the thing. There's no way I can stop the doomsday clock or the fear that we have instilled, but why not use it to our advantage? Stand up for yourself. Protest things you don't believe in. Choose your battles. Find positive ways to deal with these fears. Feel free to keep posting your Donald Trump stuff, and I will continue to hide them. But you have every right to do that. And even though it pisses me off and probably pisses off a lot of other people, there are other people that want to read that and see that. So I am no way telling you shouldn't do that. I'm just saying that it solves nothing. But if it makes you feel better at the end of the day, then so be it. I'll never be able to solve the doomsday clock situation, and it's not really my place to solve it. I hope the world doesn't end, but as I said, I'm a kid of the 80s. I believe it's going to end any time. So I've always got that fear instilled in me. Maybe that's why I'm the kind of person I am. That's why I hug people really tight. I always hug people like it's the last time I'm going to see them. If I miss somebody, I plan something. Other people, they'd rather miss you than plan something. That's just my word of it. And take a deep breath if you find yourself really freaking out about it. And keep an eye on the Doomsday Clock. It's a very intriguing thing, and reading about it always, I don't know, it doesn't make me feel better, but it does kind of make me feel I understand it a little bit more. Anyhow, when times like these happen, whether it's depressions, recessions, or fear of nuclear war, they always say that there's one thing that always does better, and that is people still go to the movies. Even in the Depression, we had some of our biggest movie hits because of the fact that people need escapism, and movies always do that. In February, I saw a ton of movies, and we're going to take you to the movies with some quickie reviews of all those movies I checked out. So stick around, and we'll lighten the mood. Get some popcorn popped. We'll talk movies next. I'm back with you. Welcome. Devlin here, and going to take a look at the movies I saw in February 2017. I finally got to see some. January, as I said, I saw a lot of repeated ones. But, yeah, so I seen a whole bunch. Some were a little older, but, yeah, I was happy to get back to the theaters, and I'm excited to talk about all of them because I don't think there was any clinkers in the bunch. I am not eating popcorn. I always say people to get, you guys can eat popcorn or your favorite snack or beverage because you're listening to this. But trust me, I have a dry cough every once in a while, so you'll hear me cough, and I apologize for that. But if I was honestly, literally eating popcorn doing this, I'd be coughing. As much as I love popcorn, I'd be talking and eating popcorn is cough, cough, cough you'd hear, and nobody wants to listen to a show like that. All right, my first movie I saw in 2017 kicked off the year in a big way, and I'd be shocked if this isn't in my top 10 best films of 2017. I love starting a year off like that. The movie is Split, starring James McAvoy, Anya Taylor-Joy, and Betty Buckley, and it is directed by M. Night Shyamalan. M. Night Shyamalan. I can never say his name. Shyamalan. That's what I call him. Shyamalan. Maybe that is it. Anyhow, the reason I'm bringing up this director is because he started off strong with movies like Split and Unbreakable. Sorry, not Split. Signs, Unbreakable. And he got touted as the next Steven Spielberg. And after that happened, he kind of started getting a run of movies like Lady in the Water and The Village and Last Airbender, and just started falling at the wayside like he was believing his own press junket. But he's actually has a resurgence, and Split, I think, is his best movie to date. And as I said, it's one of my favorites, and I hope it's such a great film. James McAvoy plays a man. This is not, well, it might be a little bit of a spoiler, but if you watched any of the trailers, this doesn't really give away too much. Basically, he plays a man with multiple personalities, and when I say multiple, I'm talking like 23. We don't get to see all of them, but we see quite a few of them. And James McAvoy just kills it. You can actually see moments where the camera's looking at him, and his facial expressions slowly bring about that we see he's changing to a different persona. Basically what happens is all these personas seem to be they're protecting the actual man he is. And Betty Buckley plays his psychiatrist, who is kind of has her own agenda because she's trying to prove that these personalities are working together and stuff like that, and can they don't know one from another, but she believes that there might be more connections to that. And Betty Buckley, if you remember, she was the stepmom in 8 is Enough, and it's been a while since I've seen her in anything. She's just absolutely wonderful in here. But what makes this movie really creepy is that the personalities are working on something, and Betty Buckley and a whole bunch of people are trying to figure out if they can stop it or not. Basically, and I won't go into too much spoilers, but he abducts 3 teenage girls and is planning to do horrible things to them. But only certain amount of his personalities want to hurt them, others don't, and Betty Buckley's working against the clock to try to stop it from happening. Even though she's not sure what is happening. She doesn't know about the girls right away. She just knows something isn't right. Also, the 3 girls, and the lead girl is Anya Taylor-Joy, who is absolutely wonderful in this. They are also working, and once they find out that they're dealing with somebody with multiple personalities, they try to find ways to deal with each personality to get closer to their escape. This is a riveting movie where you just are on the edge of your seat, not knowing what's going to happen. And James McAvoy, I think if this came out a couple of weeks before, he would have got an Oscar nomination, because it is just, his performance of all the different characters are pitch perfect. As I was saying, M. Night, I can't even say it, I'm going to just be like I'm his friend. M. Night basically was having a bunch of bad movies, and it looked like he was washed up in Hollywood. Then a year or two ago, he released a movie called The Visit, which was actually pretty good. It was a really low-budget horror film. And I thought that was pretty good. And now he's again playing with a lower scale budget, and he's had a big, huge success with it, and rightfully so. I think this is my favorite of all his movies. Just his film work in it, and the performances he gets out of all the characters, especially James McAvoy. And yeah, definitely go see it. It might be in theaters still. It should be on DVD soon. This is one of the best of the year. I'll be shocked if I see 10 more that knock this out of the top 10, just because I loved it so much. The next film I saw, I talked about last week a little bit, 50 Shades Darker. But I really didn't go into the actual movie, so today I'm going to deal with the movie. And for those of you who want to know all the personal details, you can go listen to episode 101 for that. I am a fan of the 50 Shades Grey, the first movie. I didn't think it was like a brilliant film, but I thought it was actually quite good. And I liked it because of the character developments of Anastasia Steele and Christian Grey, played by... Oh my God, I forgot her name. Oh my Lord. This doesn't happen to me. Anyhow, Christian Grey is played by Jamie Dornan. And of course, the girl is played by... This is very unprofessional of me. I never forget actors and actresses. Okay, as I get older, I have been. I'm looking it up. Yes, I'm cheating. I cannot think of her name. It's Johnson. Dakota Johnson. Don Johnson's little girl. Anyhow, and I really like Dakota Johnson because she has this naive innocence that you kind of need for this role. The first movie was, like, it got a lot of press as an S&M movie, but it kind of plays out like a gratuitous, like, smutty little novel. Nothing too racy in it, but lots of stuff. And the second one gets a little darker, but nothing. It never crosses too many lines. And as I said, it's the character development that I find intriguing in this. And I'm starting to feel that these movies are more about Christian Grey than they are actually about Dakota Johnson, even though I guess when people read the books, they went through her experiences with dealing with this man who had some issues. Anyhow, if you like the first 50 Shades of Grey, I don't see why you wouldn't like 50 Shades Darker. I think this is a bit better of a film just because it does start to deal in darker reasons why he's in this lifestyle and why he likes to hurt women. Again, it pulls no punches. It honestly goes into that this is more than just fetishism, that this is something that he has learned, that, you know, he has a hatred for himself, he has a hatred for women. I don't want to go into it too much, but there's a lot of little plot twists that, sadly, because, you know, there's a third book, they can't really resolve, so they leave on a cliffhanger for next year when, you know, 50 Shades Freed, I believe, is the last one coming out. I like this series. It's not for everyone. If to me, they're like little. They're way better than those Hallmark movies. But it's interesting that they're kind of seen as romance films. Like I've had so many people tell me they're romance films, and I've had so many people tell me that they're like S&M fetish films, but they're not. There's so much more to these, and if you get it, then you'll like these movies. If you don't and write it off as those things going into it, you're not going to enjoy these movies at all. If it's not your thing, wait till DVD, wait till streaming or where else you can see it, wait till it's on Netflix and stuff. I like the movie. I'm glad people are going out to see it. My next film is another sequel, John Wick 2. Chapter 2. Keanu Reeves is the star of this movie, and he did a little movie about 2 years ago called John Wick. And a lot of people that I watch for reviewers like this film so much that it intrigued me enough to buy the DVD. And I absolutely loved it. I thought this movie was absolutely phenomenal. It was nice to see Keanu Reeves in something that I really enjoyed again. I've never really hated Keanu Reeves, but I do believe he's a little limited as an actor, and he's at his best when even movies like Speed, he looked good in it. But even there, his acting limitations, I always felt he was better when he did smaller roles and supporting roles. So when I finally saw John Wick, I was blown away how much I liked him and the movie. I don't know the name of the director, but it was directed by a guy who is a stunt coordinator. So the action sequences are just over the top. And I can happily just say, if you've never seen John Wick and you like action, what are you waiting for? It's like the best action film that has come out in years. And guess what? John Wick 2 is just as good. Now, I still think the original is better because it was fresh, it was new when we first saw it. But the second one continues the lore of it. John Wick is a hitman who basically somehow manages to get out of the business. You know how they always say you can't get out of the business. He manages to do that in the first one. Something draws him back in. I won't give it away. And in the second one, he finds out that, yeah, he is still technically in it. He kills a lot of people in this, and creatively too. And it's great to see Keanu Reeves pull this off. Not once do I ever think this guy cannot do it. He's just right in there, in your face, doing all the stunts and stuff. Phenomenal stuff. This is a good franchise for Keanu. What I love about it is the first one wasn't that big a box office draw, but because word of mouth was out, everybody had to see it. And John Wick 2 is now becoming a bigger hit because of it. And I'm sure John Wick 3 and how many more they give us is great. Now, the assassination world in this, the hitman world in this, is incredible. They come up with some neat lore. In the first one, they give us this awesome Assassin's Hotel. They continue building on that in the second one, but they also give us, the Assassin Network, little rules and stuff that you have to follow to stay in the organization. It's beautiful. It's just absolutely beautiful. And as I said, I think I like the first one better because it was fresh and new, but the second one does not leave you hanging. It's just another good, entertaining film. And if you like that popcorn action blood thing, this is good, and it's still playing out there. Now, I got to see a couple of little older films. When I say older, ones that, played a little while ago. And the other one I think wasn't that long ago. It just kind of fell off the map, but I went to go see it. So I wanted to talk about it because I loved the one movie so much. And that movie is Arrival with Amy Adams and Jeremy Renner and Forrest Whitaker. It is such a good movie. Now, people told me it was a good movie. And they told me this is a thinking man's science fiction, which we don't get anymore. And that usually scares me off when I saw it. But I got to finally see this. And I know it just came out on DVD. And I'm planning to buy it for sure because it is just a great film. I like movies that build. And this builds. This is not like an action-packed science fiction. This is kind of a thinking man's Independence Day, where Independence Day was all crazy and fun, and I'm talking about the first one, not the second one. It was all fun and action-packed. This one is slower. There's times there's not even music on the soundtrack, which I thought was a nice, bold choice. The director just does some wonderful things. He gets incredible performances out of Amy Adams and Jeremy Renner and all the other supporting cast as well. And it's basically about, she's a communications teacher, and one day aliens arrive but are not really communicating. And basically you see how the world deals with it. And they work together to try to break the codes on why they have come to Earth. And she's chosen because of her language, and she comes up with a groundbreaking way of communicating with them. But time is what they need, and time they're not even sure if they have. They don't know if the aliens are here for destruction or if they're here to make contact or anything. And you don't know even as the movie goes exactly what they want until, near the end. And even then, to talk about a thinking man's science fiction movie, this is one of those movies that you can go out with friends after and talk about, and everybody will have a different perception of what they just saw. And I like that, because I was with my friend and we talked about it on the car ride home, and we both had very different ideas. Now, there is an ending to this movie, don't get me wrong, but it's an ending that can be perceived different ways. And I love hearing other people's ways, and I think that's why it's such a great film. I was happy to see it got nominated for the Oscars. Don't think it has a shot in hell of winning, but it's nice that it is part of one of the best movies of the year, because I loved it so much. It was really, really good. The other movie I saw is a movie that came out early this year, like January, but I don't think it did too well. It's Matthew McConaughey and Edgar Ramirez in a little movie called Gold. And I knew nothing about this movie. We wound up going into the theater. It was one of the cheap theaters. And I checked it out, and I was surprised that I actually liked it. Just because I knew nothing about it. It's basically about a man. It's inspired by true stories. You always got to see how they phrase things. Is it inspired? Is it based? And I think this was inspired by true events. But it was basically about a man who all his life he searched for gold, and he puts all his money on the line on a guy who thinks he knows where he can get some. And that's played by Edgar Ramirez, who I have a major crush on now. I've never known this guy, though he's been in a lot of movies, and I want to see them now because I really thought he was really awesome in this movie. And McConaughey was good too. He produces this movie as well, and you can tell he was really into the character because he doesn't play the most attractive man. He's got a bit of a beer belly. He's got crooked teeth, they're yellowed, stained, he sweats all the time. And I always think an actor, you can tell he likes the script when he's willing to go that, embrace that much of the role for it. But basically, they go searching for a gold mine, and I don't want to give too much away, even though it was news events or something. But basically, they find it, and there's a series of mishaps that happen. Once they find it, everybody wants to be their friend, everybody wants to sign with them, and there's a whole bunch of little plot twists that I liked. I didn't love the movie, but I actually enjoyed it. I surprised how much I was enthused by it. I think it was done in a style like Wolf of Wall Street and War Dogs, but I think they did the movie much better in that style. But they tried for that style, and it didn't really succeed in everything they wanted to do. But I still think it was a fairly good movie. And, if you get to catch it on, Netflix or any of those boxes that you can find, check it out because you might just enjoy it. It's called Gold. Anyhow, that's the movies I saw, and March, I can tell you, is going to have a ton of them. I was looking, and from Logan to Beauty and the Beast to the Power Rangers movie to Kong Island, there's a ton of them, and I'm hoping to see them all like first weekend because they look just so so incredible. So I am sure I'll be back at the end of March or early April with my reviews of those films. Keep going out to the movies, support the movies, that's how they make good movies, is when you keep supporting them. If you just watch your movies through the little Netflix and stuff, you're going to start getting crappier movies because of the fact that, nobody's making any money, and that's what Hollywood likes to do, make money. Anyhow, no, don't worry, we're not going to talk about the Doomsday Clock. I'm going to do some reminiscing. I'm going to talk about my mother, her cooking and her baking, because comfort food's another thing that always helps us forget about the Doomsday Clock and the end of the world and all that. And I'm going to take a lighthearted look at that when we come back. Hello, we're back for the last segment on today's Devlin's Pirate Radio Show. Thanks for all who have made it through to this point. I will keep you for a couple of more minutes, and then you can head out on your day and go find your own adventures. Not that I ever talk about too many adventures that I do. I'm pretty set back in my ways. I'm going to talk about comfort food today. I like talking about comfort food. And mostly in the comfort food I'm going to talk about is my mom's cooking and baking. Now, my mom's no longer with us, but every once in a while I still get memories of my mom's cooking and stuff. Now, I'm a little bit screwed up. I was brought up in the 70s and 80s where processed became really huge. So a lot of my cookies and stuff, my favorite cookies, are processed in the bag cookies. Now, I do enjoy fresh, chocolate chip cookies like anybody else, but before you boo and hiss, I actually kind of sometimes like the processed better than the actual baked cookies. I'm not trying to be, one of those guys. It's just sometimes when I taste, it all tastes good at the far, but sometimes I find that baked goods have aftertastes, or there's something in them that makes them taste a little off. Maybe it's because of all the years of processed junk food that I ate that I don't, So I'm one of those ones that when people say, oh, there's nothing like fresh baked cooking, no, I actually don't mind processed stuff, but hey, don't get me wrong. Every once in a while I do taste something that's freshly baked that I really do enjoy. That being said, my mother did make some stuff. Start off with the baking, because I liked my mother's baking a lot. She made some really wonderful things. Now, my favorite thing my mother baked, I was so naive. I actually didn't know she didn't bake it, but it was my favorite dessert, and it still remains my favorite, even though I haven't had it in decades. It was a dessert that she just made out of a box that she didn't even have to put in the oven. It was actually, some of you might remember this, Royal Cheesecake, I think is the company. And it was a no-bake cheesecake. Now, for years, I thought my mother actually cooked this. Now, I knew it was from a box, but I thought it was actually something that had to be cooked. Later, I found out, no, you just kind of make all the ingredients, put it in, and put it in the fridge. I've actually made it a few times myself after she passed away, but then it disappeared from the shelves, and it's like almost impossible to find. I think somebody told me they might still sell it in the States somewhere, but since I don't shop in the States, it's been a while since I've tasted this. This was my favorite, and I always give my mom the credit for making it, even though, as I said, she didn't have to bake it. She just kind of put the ingredients together and it was there. I have never tasted cheesecake as good as this. Again, it could be because of the processedness of it. I love the graham crackers. I swear they did something to the graham crackers, because I never tasted graham crackers so good. And then the actual thing. And every time I go to a cheesecake, people will be like, oh, you got to try their cheesecake. It's to die for. And then when I taste it, it's bland. It's just, no, it's not royal cheesecake. So this was a good example of how maybe my taste buds have been screwed up, but I love it. It's my favorite, and I wish I could find it. I would make it for myself because it's just that good. And I don't bake. I cook a little bit, but I don't bake. Baking for me is, doing those cinnamon rolls that you get out of the can, and even then I'm afraid that, that pop, when they when they the crescent rolls from the Pillsbury, where you have to kind of twist it just enough to pop. I always expect my hands are going to blow off or something. Kind of scary, so but probably why I don't bake. I've tried to bake things. I remember trying banana bread and stuff like that. But yeah, this no cooked cheesecake was one of my mom's favorites. But little did I know she didn't really do much except put it together. But maybe it was mother's love that made it taste just that good. Well, I remember the two I made were pretty good after she passed. One of the things that was her recipe, and sadly we don't have a lot of her recipes anymore. I think she may have given a couple recipes out to friends and family, but she hand wrote all hers in German. And I think the books got lost or something when we were, getting the house ready and stuff, and we never translated them. And so a lot of wonderful recipes were lost. But my favorite baked good that she did make was she made a potato donut that was just absolutely wonderful. Now, I remember as a kid, I'd always hear potato donut, and those two words did not work well. It's good because I like potato and I like donut, but putting them together just didn't kind of do it for me. But when you tasted these, and these were incredible when you tasted them like fresh out the oven, they were just so awesome. And she even made them in a way that they were a little bit crispy, but not like crispy like a fried chicken crisp or too crispy. But she'd always let them brown just a little bit to get that crunch when you bite it. And you don't think of a donut with a crunch to it, but they were it's mouth-watering just thinking about them. And some of the people that had them, if I mentioned my mom's potato donuts, they'd be thinking the same thing, like, why didn't we get that recipe? Why didn't we save that recipe? It's probably out there somewhere, probably something, because she got most of her recipes from, cookbooks, or, a neighbor would try something, and because that's what you did back then, and say, I got to get this recipe and stuff. Her baking was incredible. She also did another thing where she took Rice Krispie squares, and I remember she put chocolate in it. And I don't recall at the time if they were doing this, but she found this recipe, and it was just incredible. And I now see you can do Rice Krispie squares with everything, but she did it at a time where it was almost controversial, not controversial, but it was shocking. How dare you put chocolate in those old, familiar classics Rice Krispie squares? But they were phenomenal, and she used colored marshmallows in it too, so it made it look really nice. Yeah, my mom she didn't bake a lot, but when she did, it was nice, but she'd do it for special occasions, or, like everybody else when Christmas came around, to have some baked goods. They didn't last around our house. My mother had 3 boys and, my dad, and so baked goods didn't last. So I think she was just as happy to, buy a bag of cookies or, buy something from the store, because she'd take all that time, making a big batch of the, And I remember when she made the donuts, she made a ton of them. But they were still gone because they were just so good. And even, they were just so good. Can you tell I'm a little hungry right now? But anyhow, just the smell when I knew she was cooking. It was just like, oh, she's cooking. I wonder what she's, baking, Now, my mom's cooking, she had some things that I absolutely adored that she cooked. I was a fussy kid eating. I remember, this is probably a lame story to tell you, but I like it. My mother used to just make potatoes and gravy. And I never really was into potatoes when I was a little kid. But ironically, if she smashed the potatoes into the gravy, she basically would give it to me. And I was a huge Peanuts fan, and I may have told this story in the past, but after a Peanuts special, she'd grind the thing and told me it was called Charlie Brown's soup. And I loved it. I don't know. They kind of had to hide things from me, and then I would try it. But she made the most wonderful mashed potatoes. I remember always going to my friends' mashed potatoes. Now we're talking the 70s, 80s, so Sometimes they were a little lumpy, but she just like would whip these things and just stir and stir, so they were so creamy and lots of milk in it. Now everybody's mashed potatoes are pretty much like that, but I remember a time when there was lots of lumpy stuff out there when I'd go to my friends' houses, but my mother, really made the nice creamy potatoes, mashed potatoes. She made one of my favorite things she cooked was this meal called rouladen. It was my favorite meal that she cooked, and it was just absolutely schmecken, which is a German word for wonderful, tasty, delicious. And rouladen is, I guess it's German. Because my mother's German, I just assumed it's German. I noticed they do sell it at Denninger's once in a while, but it's never on a day that I go in to eat. And rouladen is basically this really thin, tenderized meat. And I'm probably getting this all wrong, and please, if you're a cook, don't yell at me too much. This is what I remember it as a kid. It was really light tasting, like meat. And then what they'd do is they'd wrap different things in it, like bacon and onions and stuff like that, pickle, and then they'd tie it up with string, so it would actually, this meat would cook with all those things, and the flavors of the bacon and the pickle and stuff would go into the meat. And literally, when you cut the string, you could eat the stuff in the middle. When I was a kid, I didn't. But the meat had this kind of like a pickled flavor to it. But it was so tender because it was so lightly, like, 'cause it's very thinly sliced. It was so good. And I actually had it one time. Mike and his mom, we went to a German restaurant, and I saw that they had rouladen, and I ordered it. And, Mike's parents were like shocked, like, rouladen sounds so fancy and stuff. And I explained what it was, and I loved tasting it again because I hadn't had it. It's like you don't think that sometimes, like, when your parents pass, you're gonna, you think you're gonna just miss them, and then you forget, oh, they had a whole bunch of other things you're gonna miss from them. And so it was the first time in ages I had ever tasted rouladen. I've looked it up to try to see if I could try to cook it myself, but I don't know. It seems like so much work, and I'm just afraid I'm going to just burn it or destroy it and take away that memory. But hopefully at Denninger's I'll pop in one day when I go in for a lunch and they'll have rouladen, because it is just absolutely phenomenal. And I used to love tasting it when she made it. I've talked before in the past, I was a big egg eater, and it was my dad who made all the eggs, and he did the breakfasts and stuff like that. And I loved his French toast. I became obsessed with French toast. My body size right now, you can blame to chocolate chip cookies and French toast, which I ate a lot of when I was a kid. I try to limit myself to once a week now, maybe twice a week when I'm bad. But I used to have it every day at lunch, and Sunday mornings I have French toast, and to this day I continue that tradition. My dad used to make it every Sunday morning, and yeah, it was a beautiful tradition that I continue to this day. I have it every Sunday morning, and that's when I do it. But my mom just, she loved cooking, whether it was pork chops and stuff like that. Eventually, when she got older, she had trouble standing up a lot and that, so my dad did a lot of the cooking when he retired. He kind of took it over. But, she'd make the cabbage rolls and stuff like that. I wasn't a big cabbage roll fan. I still am not a big cabbage roll fan, but, I heard they were really good when she made them, or she'd have my sister-in-law over to help make them and stuff like that. Now, my mom, as much as I love my mom, she did actually cook something that I was not a fan of, and she's ruined me for it to this day. And, no offense, Mom, I love you if you're listening right now, but it's funny because I've talked to some people, and they all have at least one, like, thing that their mother used to cook that they weren't really fans of. For me, it was ribs. My mother, she made ribs, and my dad followed through on making these ribs. And I don't know what recipe they used, but it just was horrible. I was not a fan. Other people in my family absolutely loved it. When they heard rib night was coming up, I was just like, ew. And I'd try to be nice about it, but I literally didn't like it. I found them to be very greasy. I found them to be very tough. I didn't enjoy the taste at all. I didn't like anything about it. And whenever I hear ribs, I automatically go to that. And it's weird because people go, "Oh, I can't wait, Rib Fest is coming up." And I almost get sick to my stomach. I'm not trying to be mean in any sort of way. I'm just telling you, my mother and my father, and I think my father learned from my mother. I just don't know how they made their ribs, but it was not something that I was a fan of. And to this day, I hear rib fests, and I just kind of want to, I don't want to be rude, but I want to run to the toilet because I got these horrible memories of how greasy and sliming my parents' ribs were. Yeah, I have to check with my brothers to see if they had any problems with it, but for me, they ruined me for ribs for life. And it's funny, when I told Mike that, when I met Mike, we talked about our parents, and he said that for him, his mother cooked, the thing he couldn't do was craft dinner. Now, I thought we weren't going to get together as a couple because I thought, well, I like craft dinner once in a while. And he just can't look at macaroni and cheese. And said, why? And he goes, my mother made horrible macaroni and cheese. And other kids just look forward to craft dinner night, and he just winced. And I thought to myself, okay, my mother at least, her thing was ribs, which, takes a little bit to cook and marinate and stuff. But craft dinner, how badly can you make craft dinner that it turns you off as a kid? So I literally, when I'm in the mood for craft dinner or macaroni and cheese, go out and buy my cabbage rolls because that's his favorite food. And I'll bring it to him. And he'll have that to heat up because I don't like them, and then I'll have my craft dinner. But it's funny that we found something that we both kind of, our parents kind of ruined us on. And Mike, literally, he has never, ever tried macaroni and cheese since I know him. It's like not a comfort food for him. It's a discomfort food. And if you invite me to Rib Fest, it's not that I won't go, but if you don't ever see me eating ribs, don't take it personally because now you know. But my mother made up for all her other wonderful cooking and baking and stuff. And, sometimes I'll actually bite into a cookie or something and I'll remember, hey, that tastes like my mother's. Sadly, I can't say the same for the cheesecake because I've never found a cheesecake that comes close to her world famous non-cook baked royal cheesecake, which still makes me laugh that I still give my mother credit for baking that when she had to do was follow the instructions, not the destructions, and basically just put it in to be chilled. But it's funny how our heads get like that. And I'm sure just talking about this topic right now, you're probably thinking about what your moms or your dads cooked for you that you loved, and then maybe other things that you didn't love so much that may have turned you off as an adult. And I'm glad, because that's why I like doing this show, is that I like talking about things and then people telling me, by the way, you did a segment about this and it made me think of my own parents. That's one of the things I love, and that's why I do this. A couple of weeks ago, we lost a wonderful storyteller named Stuart MacLeod. He's an incredible Canadian, and I only knew a little bit about him. I know he was a host of CBC's Vinyl Cafe, and I know he toured commonly, especially Christmas time, telling wonderful stories. I had only heard a handful of stories. A friend of mine, Reese Schofield, shared a lot of the stories with me that he would find on Vinyl Cafe, and he'd record the podcast, and he let me hear some of them, and the stories were wonderful. And I've actually found out since he's died, I've listened to some of his stories. I told you my inspiration for storytelling came from Henry Rollins, but I know so many people who think the world of Stuart MacLeod and got into talking and reading about that. It's a loss that we lost him. What I do want to thank Stuart MacLeod for is that he's opened up storytelling for Canada, and anybody who has done that, I thank them for keeping storytelling alive. I know the Staircase runs couples storytelling things. You know, I was part of the 6 Minute Memoirs. I'd like to do it again sometime. But they have other storytelling, and anywhere in your city you might find this. Look for the storytelling and keep it alive. The reason I talked about my baked goods and stuff is because I wanted to talk about those personal stories more. I do it all through my first 100 episodes, and people tell me how much they love them. And the reason they love them is because it opens up memories towards them. And that's what I want to do. I want to be able to inspire people to remember stuff and put a smile on their face. Or maybe sometimes it won't. It might make you sad, but thinking about stuff is a good thing. So, yeah, so I decided, I was going to talk about something heavier, and I decided I'm going to get back into more talking about personal memories and stuff like that. So, my new shows may have some nostalgia, maybe talk about a movie or a TV show or music that I love. Then, I'll talk about something maybe a little more important, maybe with some edge to it. And then I want to do a segment that's lighter and share those stories with you too. And, for me, it's like a time capsule too, when my time comes and I pass, that people can go online and spend some time with me still. My nieces and nephews can hear stories that maybe I didn't get a chance to tell them when I was alive, or they didn't know about their grandparents or their crazy, wacky uncle. And I see why people get addicted to podcasting and storytelling. And if it's something you've always thought about doing, now's the time. This is around the time I started doing it a couple of years back, and I'm still in full swing, and I hope that you do it too. And if I inspired you in any way, I'm happy I did. I hope I pushed you into the deep end and tried things that were different and stuff like that. Anyhow, that's my time with you. Thank you for spending a few minutes. Now get out there and enjoy the world. Do something fun, do something fabulous, and I will talk to you very, very soon.